Trump's bold call, right? I don't know if you saw the news headlines, but Trump's big old bold call, right? And he specifically said, I'll demand interest rate drop immediately. Now, do we think that that's actually going to happen? Right? We have to talk about, well, is that even possible? Right? So he announced that he wants interest rate cuts immediately. A lot of people don't know that the president doesn't have control over the Federal Reserve, which the Federal Reserve sets the Fed funds rate. Now, the Fed funds rate then has a spread and then comes out to be a mortgage interest rate or possibly what you can borrow money at. So, the president, whether it's Sleepy Joe or Ronald Rump, they have no input. Now, they're not supposed to. That doesn't mean that if someone's a little tyrannical and says, if you don't do this, I'm going to find other avenues and other channels to get to you, right? Now, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who's been at all the meetings, Jerome Powell, he mentioned last year that he plans on resigning immediately and that he doesn't plan on staying at the Federal Reserve because he knows exactly that this president is that type where they take retaliation against people that don't jump on board onto what they want exactly. And we've seen it with other people before. So Trump's bold call about I'm going to demand an interest rate drop immediately. And we also have to consider this, right? So last year the Federal Reserve projected, hey, we're going to have 4 rate cuts for 2025. Well, they ended up adjusting it, right? They ended up adjusting it. Let me see here. In September, right? So last September during that last meeting, they went from 4 cuts to 2 cuts, right? So that clearly means that we don't have inflation under control yet. They're taking a more hesitant approach. They want to be slow about this, right? And this interest rate cut immediately, sure. I mean, the Federal Reserve was already planning for 2. So I'm not going to give necessarily this person credit. And number 2, like we're seeing, we've had 2 interest rate cuts already. We've had basis point cut, and we've seen, right, that necessarily isn't driving mortgage rates downwards. Well, why not? Well, we have to look at other parts of the market, and it's basically showing that there's creeping in, it's starting to creep in now, but there isn't confidence in 2025 of how well we might do, right? So that's all being priced in of, okay, great, you can give us a rate cut. Fine, that's fine. But we have to understand what rate cuts are meant to do, right? So they usually inject a rate cut when they want the market to start increasing activity, right? They're trying to stimulate the market with a rate cut. What they're seeing is, well, we had 2 major rate cuts recently. We had 50 basis points, 25 basis points, right? Another 25 basis points. So we're not seeing the decrease, and it's because everyone's pretty much already seen the numbers and seen, well, I mean, you can give us rate cuts, but inflation and CPI, the index, right? It's not doing so hot. So these stimulus cuts, right? They're not stimulus checks. They're stimulating cuts on the Fed fund rates. Aren't doing too much, right? So sure, the Fed Reserve already planned for 2. If Trump wants to say, hey, give me credit for this, I just got into office. And then this is the funny thing, though, is 28th, 29th, we have the next Federal Reserve meeting. So at those meetings, that's when they announce economic projections, numbers and data that has come in, and if there's any changes that they want to do, if they want to increase rates or if they want to decrease rates, right? So this is right in great timing. We're just in a couple days. Who knows? They may say, hey, we're going to do a rate cut of 25 basis points. Great. That's 1 out of the 2 already projected. So there's no credit for this man, and that's not to take away credit at all. We just have to really think about what is actually being said and what's actually being done. Because to me, this is really just rah-rah noise to try to get more support and to say, I supported the economy or I made homes more affordable. That's not how it works, right? And that's why we're having conversations like this, because this helps explain that a little bit more from a different perspective, right? From someone that can explain it in a way that's not super confusing. There's a lot of news out there, a lot of YouTube videos and stuff where these people are just explaining at an economist level, and it's just too high level. Look, I scored well on my ASVAB, but I understand when you're missing the mark. So hopefully we get an interest rate cut. I mean, actually, hopefully not. We really should, depending on the CPI numbers that we have coming in, right? We don't want to reaccelerate inflation. And basically having a rate cut, making it cheaper to get a loan on money or mortgage, whatever it is, right? I don't think is necessarily going to help. That's just going to make more corporations borrow more, and it's going to make the government borrow more from the Federal Reserve. That's another little nugget. People don't realize that the government borrows this money from the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is a totally separate entity than the American government. Anyways, let's keep moving with our topics for the week here. Let's see. All right, so as we know, there's been a lot of things popping off politically, of course, but geopolitics, war, right? A lot of our viewers, military members like myself, veterans, we understand what's going on over there. And here's the kicker, is that all of that affects us here and affects the global markets. So that's why it's important to know about geopolitics and what's going on over there, because one of our major pillars is stocks, right? And well, a lot of great stock companies are some of those defense companies, right? So if you know that, hey, some things may start boiling in the Middle East, well, companies like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Anduril later down the road, right, could be great possible investments, right? So not necessarily being obsessed about the war or the politics behind it and stuff like that. I care about, well, what's actually happening geopolitically and how does this affect the economy? How does this affect financial markets, crypto markets, a bunch of different stuff like that. So we've seen a lot of unrest in the Middle East just in the last few months, but just in the last year, the whole conflict also with Israel, Iran, Ukraine, of course, and also the Southeast China Sea with Taiwan. So definitely a lot of things to always continuously look at every single day of what's going on. But the conflicts over there in the Middle East drives oil prices up incredibly. As we know, the more stuff that's going on out there, the riskier it is for those traders, right, to export their oil, to move their oil, especially like the Suez Canal. There's certain choke points. So when a lot of stuff is coming to a boiling point in the Middle East, right, well, we have an increase in oil prices, right, from those exporters. But that's why it's important for us to have other sources of oil, of course, so that we can help mitigate. So hey, if the stuff in the Middle East is going crazy and we can't necessarily get oil, those barrels go up in price. Well, can we get them from somewhere else, from our own sources, and not have to depend on them for that oil to pay those prices? All right, what else we got? Man, this week's been wild with the inauguration, right? And we got the new cabinet, new term, new presidency in here. And one thing that people have been talking about a lot is deportation, right? So deportation crisis is possibly going to drive up the home prices, right? So here in Colorado, I'm sure some of you guys heard about the Venezuelan gangs type thing, and that was an intriguing experience for sure. I wasn't there. I wasn't at those apartments at all. I saw the videos. There wasn't stuff here. The news wants you to think that there's an invasion from the inside or something like that, and that these people are like running blocks. Like, it doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Those people aren't running an armed militia here, right? The Aurora Police Department, the SWAT team would have already been there. The National Guard would have been called, right? There's all these measures, but how does that connect to this, right? Well, it obviously connects to deportation. And a lot of people are thinking, well, how does deportation relate to home prices? And my thing is, well, who builds the homes? We have to be real. Who has built the homes for the last 100 years, right? We really have to take a look at it. So how does deportation really impact everything? So we could see a reduction in the construction workforce by 20%. Right, so that's going to cause obviously labor shortages and project delays, and then wages in the construction sector are going up pretty fast as everyone's competing for skilled workers. And this isn't the first time we've seen this. We have these cycles of these nationalist deportation views, which if you have those views, that's okay, right? And you have to know the definition of a nationalist, right? I don't want anyone to be offended by any of this here. These are just clear definitions. But when we have these in certain cycles, right, as we saw in early 2000s under Bush, especially after 9/11 and pre 9/11, right, we have an influx in deportation and we have an increase in prices because of shortages of labor. It's just basic economics, right? And there's a conversation actually going on now, right, with Elon Musk pretty much being the first lady and being in the cabinet of the H-1B, right? So there's that big that I don't know how that's really going to work out in the party, but he's pretty much telling Americans, hey, we're not going to get rid of the H-1B program, right, to bring these immigrants in because they're skilled workers and they have more skills than Americans to do these tech jobs, right? So that's an intriguing case because those people who come in on the H-1B visa, there's a whole process and there's fees, of course, right? There's all this red tape, right? They have a skill. They have a skill though. But it's intriguing that people don't say that those people are necessarily stealing jobs just because they do the paperwork and pay the fees versus the guy that's not stealing jobs. He's doing work that a lot of us Americans are not going to go out and do, right? Especially at those wages. Now, my thing is, okay, great. I'm still on board, still tracking, great. Deport them, right? Illegal shouldn't be a hurdle. Okay, great. Then we'd run into the labor shortages, right? Where the home prices go up. We have project delays, right? We have extensions. Instead of the house having a project end date of 6 months out, now it's going to take anywhere from 9 to 12 months, right? We saw the delays and the pushbacks in materials during COVID, right? Ask anyone that was getting a house built during COVID or in construction at all. These wait times for windows, right, pushed way out, and it was causing all these projects to get pushed by months, if not 12 plus months or so. So we have a shortage of material supplies, and we have an increase now because of that shortage of each of those, let's say, windows in this case. So what do we think would happen in the same case, but now we're not talking about materials, we're talking about labor. So the same thing, right? Where now obviously all the laborers are getting deported, right? And now they're looking around and all the people that are here that do want to labor, that are legal, that are Americans, well, they want to charge more, right? Or like always, right, their price has been $60 an hour, $80 an hour, versus a lot of these immigrants, it could be $10 an hour, $15, $20 an hour. But we just run into that conundrum. I'm not for this, against this. It doesn't matter how you cut it. All I think about is, well, let's take a look at the numbers and how does that affect our numbers? And that's it. If you supported mass deportation, great, more power to you. But what does that equal out, right, on the other side when it comes to, oh, I want to buy a house, or I want to get this done to my house? Why are all these handymen and laborers and repair work, right? Why is this so expensive, right? And well, that's what happens. So we'll see what comes of that. Like I said, I'm not for or against anything at all. I just see black and white and, well, what is going to come of this so that we can kind of anticipate that, right? So it may not be the best time to get a custom home built or to go with one of the big box builders, because now we need to take a look at those big box builders, right? Lennar, D.R. Horton. What are their projections, right? And honestly, they could even lie, because once they have your money and you're under contract with them, if the projection changes, they're going to do everything in their willpower to keep you into that. Even if their projection said, hey, you'll be in your new house in 9 months, and it's custom this, all this stuff. And then once they get your money, your deposit, right? Well, I know we said 9 months, now it's about 18 months. You have to understand, because of labor shortage and parts and materials. But you know what? We can make it 12 months. How about, instead of, I know we said 9 months, and now I know we're saying 16 months, but how about we guarantee you 12 months, but you're going to pay 30K more, because of this, because of that. They're gonna figure out. And if it's not right there, they're gonna tack it onto your loan. And you're gonna say, well, what else am I supposed to do? So those are just things to think about, right? I'm not saying that is going to happen at all. These are just things to anticipate, right, and to plan for. So that's a little bit. We'll see how that goes over this term with deportation, and if it actually does increase anything or not. But as many of you guys know, I'm Mercedes, the military realtor, and this is the Military Wealth Club, right? So we hold this every single week, and we advocate for wealth creation and financial literacy among our ranks through business, real estate, crypto, and stocks, right? So those are our pillars right there, our 5 pillars of wealth creation right there. And we're going to hold a show every single week and talk about all the events that happened this previous week, what's upcoming, what to look for, and sometimes we'll also have guests on board and we'll answer some questions too. So don't forget to share this with any other military members or anyone else that really wants to increase their financial literacy and wealth creation. So we just finished talking about a little bit of deportation, and obviously that connects to increasing of material costs, like I mentioned, for these homes and renovations, right? Repair work and stuff like that. So just something to be cognizant about. If you own a home right now, lock in a good handyman. I'm not even gonna lock in a good lock in a good handyman. Hopefully they don't get deported. That's not saying all handymen are of a certain, but hopefully that person doesn't get deported and you can have that consistent work, because a lot of you guys know that having consistent work with the contractor, with whoever you trust, you can't beat that. Just having loyalty and having a person to come do maintenance. A lot of people don't understand how important it is to stay on top of your maintenance, so you don't end up having to do way more than you needed to just because you didn't plan for that. So lock in your handyman, because who knows what's going to happen in the next few months and couple years. And I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a $500 billion pretty much AI revolution made with Trump announcing this big deal. But pretty much these tech giants are changing real estate forever. So you got companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. They're investing heavily into AI for real estate. So market analytics, trends, all this stuff. They're putting so much money into AI for everything. When not just real estate, but business, stocks, anything and everything. And AI is the buzzword. Everything toothpaste has AI in it nowadays, right? And for some of you, this may sound like the dot-com boom, right? Like the 90s again, where everything was internet, everything was web, everything had a dot-com. And I very much feel like we're in that same bubble that eventually, has to pop. It doesn't have to be a catastrophe. It's just a 20% correction downward, but we run into these cycles all the time. So be wary of everything AI, right? Because it's getting weird. It's getting weird. They're trying to put AI on everything. I go to Top Golf and I see ads for AI golf clubs, and I'm just like, ugh. I mean, when I was growing up, AI was Allen Iverson. So yeah. This is my foam taco here, so if you see me squeezing on that, that's just... But yeah, so tons of money being injected into AI. You gotta learn the tools or you will get left behind. I even tell realtors this, tell anybody and everybody. Like, think about it like this. This is when I was going to grade school, elementary school, all the teachers would say this, and they would say, you gotta learn how to do the math because you're not gonna have a calculator in your pocket. And now we have supercomputers in our pockets. So it's pretty much the same thing. Are you going to learn how to use your tools correctly and be more productive and efficient? Or are you just going to say, oh, that's a fad, I'm not going to get on board, I'm not going to learn this stuff, and I'm going to just do it how I've always done it, right? So now the person that doesn't have any tools and they're used to screwing in screws by hand somehow. It makes a big difference when they get a Phillips head screwdriver, a number 2, in their hand. Right now, as you have seen, and I'm sure maybe we have done as well, but we get something or someone gets a tool and they really don't know how to use it and they just throw it away. And they don't realize the value that could be basically achieved by using that tool, right? And that's what we don't want to happen with basically AI and this tech, right? So it can only increase basically your productivity if you know how to use it, though. That's the thing. It's not just AI is going to make you the best XYZ. No, you still have to put the work into it. You still have to learn. You still have to think and refine your skills. That's why there are really good people, or that's why there are people that are really good at using ChatGPT, and there are people that are really bad. And when I realized that ChatGPT isn't giving me a good prompt or something like that, well, I reflect back on me. Something I'll get frustrated at it, but I have to really think back, and I'm like, as a leader, especially in the military, I've seen this a lot, and it's you have to realize that if the folks are getting into trouble and doing XYZ, a good leader always takes it on. Whether it's 2 in the morning and you get a call that someone got a DUI or someone got this, right? You're like, dude, that has no relation to me at all. But you have to have the humility and say, okay, let me take that on board. I know, could have done better. So with ChatGPT, you have to talk to it like a kid, like or an assistant, and you have to be able to articulate and explain. And it's a skill. It's a skill that I'm still working on. But when it gives me a bad answer or something that I don't like, you have to discern of, okay, this is past its capabilities versus, okay, I'm not giving it the right structuring of instructions, right? And there's a lot of different ways to play with that. But I'm telling you guys that AI, ChatGPT, these integrations, it's really the way of the future, and it's here. And I honestly love it. I love these types of integrations, and I'm just learning more and more every day. But I do have to caution that we will, and I feel like we have been doing this for a while, but we've been crossing this line of convenience, basically, like for our privacy, where we'll accept cookies just because it's on a website, just because it's easier, or just because of this, and okay, well, these two apps, they want to integrate, they want to talk to each other. Well, yeah, sure, that's fine if that lets me make my payment or do whatever I need to do. But basically, with all that ease and integration, it's very easy for a lot of data sharing, a lot of selling of your data, and for them to really monitor us as much as possible with all of these integrations, right? You have to think about how many of these IoTs, these Internet of Things that there are nowadays, of your Apple headphones and your Apple phone and your Apple Watch. And then you got a Whoop fitness band, and you have some when they come out with Apple earrings or something, and then the Meta glasses. So then right on your body, you've got 5 or 6, devices that are emitting and reporting all this data, right? Just all the time. And what do you think just happens with this data? You think it just goes to the trash can? Just no one uses it? No. That data is gold. People don't realize that data is the new oil, and we're in the fourth industrial revolution of AI and Internet of Things and these, quant computers and supercomputing. But that data, it's being sold right now. Why would that data be sold? What would they do with this data? And it's not even important, right? That's why there was a few years ago, if some of you guys remember. Let me see here. If a few years ago, some of you guys remember when there was this case with Apple, and they wouldn't let people. They were trying to get into this Apple phone because I think there were these 2 terrorists in California. But I had a conversation with someone, and they were like, well, it came down to privacy. They would give up their phone privacy because they have nothing to hide, right? They're like, oh, well, we don't think Apple should be keeping that phone locked, from the police that are trying to get information from that phone. And Apple stood their ground for a while, but eventually the phone got cracked open into. But to me, the conversation is, well, should Apple allow for that, right? Should they help the police do that? And the conversation I was having with the friend was he thought it was fine. Well, if it saves people, and I'm like, that's how it starts, right? That's out of fear, out of safety, out of something, right? Some type of fear-based thing. They use that to then get their foot in the door, and then they start looking at all of your data, right? And now all these integrations start selling your data, and this is how, right? Over time, when you're on Instagram, a lot of people are saying, "Wow, I didn't even say anything or type anything and it knew that I wanted these pair of Nikes. Well, that's not by coincidence. It doesn't just get it out of nowhere, right? It's retrieving this data, and a lot of times too, it's placing this stuff in front of you before you're even conscious of it, and then you think, oh, I wanted this by myself, right? That's the easiest way to get someone to buy something or to want to do something, is you make it seem like it's their idea. So it's subliminally fed to you because they know your data. They know all your data. They know exactly what you like. They know your habits. They know what time you scroll. They know what you look at. All this stuff. So then they push this information to you. They subliminally, subconsciously make you want this item. Then you want those shoes. And then now that you want those shoes, now you start seeing those shoes, even though subconsciously, right, for the last 6 months, they've been showing you. But once that light turns on, now you start seeing those Nike shoes. Right? It's not a coincidence, and I know that's happened to you. I know that's happened to you, and you know this happens because just like anything else, you buy a pair of shoes, you buy a car, you buy a house, whatever it is, you start noticing that more. You buy a red Miata, you're gonna start seeing red Miatas more. You buy a house with this layout, you're gonna start seeing houses with that layout more, or things that are opposite to it. Right? So we have to be honest about that. But that's pretty much data collection. And like I'm saying, I love AI, I love tech, I'm a nerd about this type of stuff. It is great, it's convenient, I love how it seamlessly connects and makes life easier and convenient, but don't forget what you're trading at the same time, right? You have to understand that these companies all want to make profits. They're going to do that by knowing your habits, using your data, selling you. So just keep that in mind. So we love AI. We definitely love AI, we love tech, but just keep an eye on that right now. But to power AI, right, we have to think about what is actually going to power all of AI. And my experience in the military, being an electrician, and after that as well, is I understand electricity, I understand power, I understand energy. And with all this pop-up of AI everywhere, my first thought was, well, how are we going to power all of this? Because I own my house in California, and which I live in Colorado now, but the house in California that I remember where the energy bill, sometimes would get a lot higher in the summer because it's a lot hotter, and they're asking people to not use power during peak hours, and all these programs and this and that. That's before the AI, right, talk came into the picture. So now as an electrician, I'm thinking, how are we going to have so much more power consumption? Right? Previously I mentioned how many IoTs, Internet of Things, we have on our bodies, right? Imagine how many of them exist in your house. Just imagine all this energy draw, right? And then we have the introduction of EVs, right? Of electric vehicles, which that throws a wrench into everything. So to me, the grid is not ready, right? The grid is not ready for this at all. And that's also, I think, why EVs definitely got pushed back a lot, and also why, I mean, we've been in recession for we've been very recessionary for the last 24 months. Let's say that at least. But basically, the grid can't handle EVs, right? But I do see a future where the grid definitely can, right? Where they're going to revamp the whole grid, and it could be this term. It could, I don't think it's going to be complete this term, but it could be initiated this term. And you really have to see this angle, all right? So hear me out here. We have a bunch of new AI, a bunch of new tech, right? These AI data centers are huge power draws, huge, right? There's a reason why Microsoft they're going to reopen 3 Mile Island, which is a nuclear facility, and they're going to use that to power basically all of their stuff in Washington, right? I believe that's correct, but yeah, with Microsoft. So nuclear is making a comeback. People don't realize that. That's the only way, right? When I signed up for the Navy, my job was going to be pretty much a nuclear mechanic, right? My job ended up changing down the road, understanding that nuclear is the only way, right? We have to worry about the waste, yes, but when it comes to solar, wind, hydro, anything else, nothing compares to the amount of energy we can create from nuclear, right? It's just so dense, it's so powerful. So that's really the only way that we're going to power this stuff. Now, that's power generation. We still have to get all this power out into the world, out to all these data centers, right? And that's through transmission lines and a whole network, a whole grid. So all of that has to get upgraded to start handling, right, possibly larger loads and just different systems, different dynamics, especially coming from nuclear and the transmission, the lengths and stuff like that, right? So the whole electrical grid gets redone as well, right? Now, here's another layer as well, is I believe the whole road system is also going to get redone, and that's going to get revamped for EVs so that all the road markings are all fresh, right? And possibly some roads may have EV charging in them. There are some roads that exist like that already. I don't think here in America, but I could definitely see that as well. So while you're driving, you're charging maybe on a like a HOV lane where you have to pay for it, right? So not with all the commoners. No, you want to charge while you're driving, you got to pay for that, right? So there's going to be tons of Tesla supercharge stations everywhere. They're going to be like gas stations, right, all over the place. We're going to have a new road system with brand new markings, right? So these EVs, these self-driving, could read the markings because there's been a lot of deaths from self-driving cars. But once they get that dialed in, right, what's going to stop you from wanting to live that lifestyle when everyone's doing it, right? When everything's autonomous, when you can just get into the car and get on your phone and do whatever you want. And hey, take me to Sprouts. Take me to Jamba Juice. So who really doesn't want to do that? The biggest issue that we have is fear, right? But if you could get in the car and it drive you wherever, a lot of people don't enjoy driving, and that's okay. That's okay, right? I enjoy driving. Now, do I want this to happen? No. Do I think it's going to be quick? No. But I think eventually we're just going to get to that point. Look, we're a society that wants to be comfortable. We believe we're number one, so we should have number one luxuries, and that's self-driving, electric cars that are quiet, that have no emission, right? And that you don't have to deal with any smelly fuel, right? Anything like that, right? They're gonna start coming out and basically degrading gasoline and diesel as much as possible. It's about the environment, right? Which they already have, all this stuff, and then they're gonna eventually, start killing it off. At least for the regular civilian. Diesel and trucks like that may stay as a diesel industry for a little bit, but I think the passenger car is definitely going to go and be EV, but before we know it completely. And I think that's a question I think a lot of my viewers can help me, answer is, well, I thought this administration was against EVs, but then we have the First Lady, Ilana Musk, for EVs. So to me, I feel like it's kind of like a bait and switch, right? It's like Trump wanted to get the votes from the boomers because they're against EVs. They still want cars to run on coal, but Elon's for EVs, right? So, but here's the flip is, well, if we redo the whole electrical grid, if we do the entire American road system, that's going to bring jobs to America. That's going to bring jobs to America. That's going to stimulate the economy. It's going to stimulate corporations. It's going to stimulate profits. We're going to rebuild America better, right? That's the angle that's going to get set up eventually. And it's going to be that they're doing a favor for us. We're going to make everything so much better. And these nuclear companies, when they come in as well, right? I had a buddy of mine, engineer, when I was telling him about nuclear months ago, he was telling me I was crazy, that there's no way Americans were gonna, welcome nuclear back, especially with, Chernobyl and all that stuff, and Japan with the two bombs, right? A lot of people are scared of nuclear. Yeah, but when it comes to money and comfort, they will sway the pants off of us. So they come in here and say, hey, we're going to build you a new basketball stadium, football stadium, baseball. So what else do you want? What kind of stadiums do you want? Monster trucks. We'll do all the stadiums you want, and then we're going to put a plant here. And then we're also going to decrease your electricity bill by 50%. And then obviously there's EV program. There's EV programs already that basically reduce the price of buying an EV. Well, how about, programs for EV chargers in your house? All this stuff, basically, they give you all this stuff, all this incentive. They make it seem like such a benefit, and then they get us all in the system, and then they hook us in, they put their hooks in, and then they start pumping up prices and stuff like that. But I'm not saying it's necessarily negative, but it's just what happens. Look at electricity over time, right? But it's, I'm not going to say necessary, but if we want to basically produce that much power, we need nuclear, and we have to revamp the entire electrical grid. And with that, we'll most likely do the road system to then introduce EVs, and then EVs will become way more common, and it's going to be the standard. Tesla, especially with Elon buying his way into the White House, he spent what, over $277 million, right? This is what is an oligarch? Anyways, he's pretty much positioned himself to be Henry Ford, right, of EV, right? That's the thing. He didn't create Tesla either. He bought Tesla, right, from others, but he made it what it's culturally into today. But that's where I see things going. Where who knows? They'll probably change laws, and he'll probably become president, right? Because he's an immigrant. But they'll change the laws and somehow get him, if he ever really wanted to be president. But right now, I think Tesla's definitely gonna do very well in the future. Like I said, replacing Henry Ford, and it's the first. Like, let's be real about it. It's the first big influential EV company, right? Especially in America. He's not number one in China, but here in America. And people don't understand branding. His branding hasn't been, I mean, the best, but it's been very good with Tesla. Just the aesthetic of it. And I'll be curious to see if they introduce the everyday vehicle price range for Teslas. Yes, even more so than the Model 3. But they have to make that decision, I really feel like, if they're going to be the luxury company or they're not. Because all the other companies they're coming behind them. Toyota, Nissan and Honda are joining forces, but you got all these other companies making full EV vehicles, not just hybrids, full EV vehicles, right? So those can be all the regular class type vehicles, but I wonder if Tesla's gonna take that high class position that I felt like they've had, but now they're just they're getting so common that they're pretty much Toyotas. Sometimes I play this trick on a Tesla owner and just act like you don't know that they have a Tesla and be like, oh, is that one of the new Toyotas? Because it has the T and it's the Model 3s. It's just like, oh man, everyone got one during COVID. We had very low interest rates and this and that, and they're beautiful cars. I love driving a Tesla. I would most likely own one if I really wanted to, if I were to choose on the EV side. But it's just something to note. So yeah, Henry Ford, put that in the back of your head. Don't forget that Tesla was a part of the Magnificent Seven as well. It hasn't been doing so well, but now, I mean, it's doing a little bit better because of Elon. So yeah, don't forget, Tesla's a technology company. It's not necessarily a car company, right? We have to realize about the tech that they're innovating, the chips that they make, the type of EV technology, their charger, right? They have obviously the patent for their charger, but other companies have said, hey, we're going to use that charger so that there's a standard across the board. And that's a big deal. If all the other companies are falling in line with your charger, that means something. So I definitely think he's positioned himself as the Henry Ford of this modern age, and even more so with this political influence. So yeah, that's a little bit about renewable energy. That's where I see us going with that there. And make sure, right? We've already been here for a while, but make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Right? We do this every single week. Tons of information that you might miss every single day. Right? And it's all here in a simple way for you to consume and understand. Man, what else we got going on this week? Well, we saw a little rise in consumer price index, right? That rose about 0.6 in December. And that was being pushed by housing, food, and energy costs, right? And I'm sure a lot of us have been feeling a lot of these pains in our wallet, especially over the last couple of years. They don't want to use the word recession, the R word, but just study the history. They usually start admitting that there was a recession if we push through it about 12 to 18 months after, right, we were actually in it. And why do they do that? Well, they don't want us to go into panic mode. They don't want us to fear. They don't want us to pull all of our money out of the banks and put it under our mattresses, right? Because that's the only way the banks stay afloat, is with our money that they then lend out. But I'm sure many of us have felt that at the grocery stores, right? There are a lot of people saying after COVID, during COVID, grocery prices went up. right? And then they never went down after COVID, right? And then everyone wants to say grocery prices, carton of eggs, all this stuff, Trump's gonna make, okay, what he told y'all, he said, I don't affect the prices of eggs. He said he was, and then he won, and then he came out and told you guys, I don't. It's literally just simple education. So I know we've all been feeling it in our wallets, and we have to be honest of, okay, well, technically we were in recession, right? If we look at the definition of a recession, and we've been very recessionary, just close, not hitting all the triggers, floating around, with CPI and inflation. But we also have other countries, major countries that are going through economic shifts and political shifts. And so we have to be wary of that and understand recessions aren't bad at all. There's this big negative connotation to it, but here's the thing: is everything like has a sine wave, and usually a sine wave with a positive projection upwards. I think this way for you guys. Yeah, positive projection going upwards, but you're not going to skip any step in that wave. So we have to go through this recessionary periods because that's how the system is set up, and then the cards get shuffled a little bit, and then we come back upwards into the market, right? So we could be coming up from COVID, right after COVID, that high, and then a little bit of downward movement, and then we're kind of floating this way, and then we may need to go back a little bit lower for us to jet upwards. Just look at any chart, look at historically of the stock market. It has to happen. There are dips, just mathematically, like think of it as gaining momentum, right? The waves have to recede a little bit, and then later they can come back stronger and fuller, but it's all cyclical. So when I hear recession, or I hear downturn, or I hear a loss of a correction, a crash, I think of great, cool, awesome. That's the time to have your capital set up to then buy more of the companies that you know are great companies. That's the thing, is that price and value. You really have to know the difference and understand that, man, we had a crazy event happen. XYZ happened, and this stock went down 20%. Okay, why did it go down? Right? Was it something actually about the company? Right? Or was it the whole industry? Right? Was there a big cyber attack? And then all the companies kind of went down together. We're all in economic recession. We're talking about this price of eggs, the price of gas, all these things are expensive. Now you're selling your stocks, right? Because, well, I don't have money. Well, I got to sell my stocks to use to... Okay, so then people start selling their stocks, right, to support themselves during these hard economic times, right? More people start selling. Then that price starts going down of that stock because now there's more of that stock out on the market. That's easy supply and demand, right? Basic. More of the stock, less price. Less of the stock, higher price. So you're selling all your stuff because of the hard times. Great. That stock starts going down. Nothing in the company could have changed though, right? You decided to sell your Google stock because you needed bread. Not because Google's bad, or because Microsoft is bad, or because their CEO is bad. Something in their leadership, or something in their technology, or something in their special secret that they got, right? Their moat. Nothing about them fundamentally changed. It's just what the market has said, right? You have to realize that the market is separate from the stocks themselves. The market is really just human psyche. It's just, well, what's the vibe out there? What's the consensus? What does the majority think? That's pretty much it. Now, yes, there's market manipulation. That's another story. But overall, it's just that, right? It's just psyche. So if I got a bunch of stocks and they all start decreasing in value, they go down 50% in value. If nothing has changed in the valuation of those stocks, in the fundamentals, right, in the core fundamentals of those businesses, I'm not going to sell it. If I these are long-term companies I want to hold for 20 years, and I plan on selling them in 20 years or 10 years or whatever it is. These are my long-term holds. I'm not trying to do a swing trade and let me sell it high here and then buy low. You can do that 1,000%, but we're just talking about long-term investing here. Price goes down because the market wants it to go down, right? Or for whatever reason, right? Nothing relating to the company's actual foundational values, right? Don't sell the stock. This isn't financial advice. This is what I do personally. This isn't financial advice, and I am not your financial advisor, so don't forget that. But I wouldn't sell it, right? Because nothing has changed about the company. The market is going to come back. The market has came back every single time, and the market is rigged to stay up. If the entire market were to fall, free fall completely, we have a bigger problem. We have, I would say, even worse than the Great Economic Depression. Yeah, the Great Depression, right? We're not talking about 07, 08, right? We're talking about the Great Depression in the early half of the 1900s. Bigger than that. You have to think about it. The whole system is rigged to stay up, right? It's always rigged to stay up. So for some reason, which has never happened in history, but if this whole system blew up, we have bigger problems. We're probably in World War III, and there's probably hostile enemies in country or some crazy, like some Batman stuff with Bane and taking over. That's what would have to happen. So let's be realistic. So what I'm saying is the market always bounce back. If you can stay strapped, stay cool, and just hold on, right? It will always come back. Now, during that downturn, that's when you use your capital, your fresh capital that you have, your free capital, to then inject into the market and buy more of those great companies that you love. Great, buy more of XYZ, buy more of this, whatever it is, and it's at a discount. It's on sale. That's what that means. Recession is scary for people that don't have money, don't understand this market, and don't understand money and the flow of money, right? They're worried that their expenses are going to grow higher than their income, their wages, right? That's their main worry. But when you invest your money over time with the correct placement and compounding interest, right, you can have some incredible gains. And that's the difference right there is that fear of recession of, oh, okay, well, I mean, I'm not saying you have no reason, right? I'm not saying those people that don't have any capita and are on fixed income or whatever, I'm not saying that they don't have reason to worry at all. I'm saying that there may be a difference within you, right? And within all of us. We're here for a reason because we want to invest, right? So you have to take that extra money and invest it wisely before the recession, during the recession, after the recession, all these times, but don't get scared of the word recession or of a word crash or of the word correction, right? Or of a dip or of a down market or of a bear market, anything. That's great, right? People are over here crying because the music is going to stop. That is fine. That's great. And you know what that tells me? That means, okay, the music stops, we're on our way down, we're about to get things on sale. And then what happens once the things are on sale? They come off sale eventually, and the price goes right back up, right? So if you can buy with confidence at the bottom of the market or as close as possible on the way down, right? Which you don't necessarily want to time the market. It can be better to have time in the market, depending on what type of investing game you're playing. But basically, buy on the way down, on sale. What happens after that? Like I just said, right? It's going to come off sale and it's going to go up. So that's definitely what I would do, and that's what I definitely plan to do, especially during, I think we're going to have a little recessionary period. We may have a little more upward push. That's that bubble I was talking about. We can only go up so high. But I definitely do see something coming just because we're overdue. People forget that about every 10 years, a recession is due. But they forget every single time, right? So if our last one was 07, 08, then we should have been due around 2017, 18, right? And we didn't. We had a great high market, and then we had COVID, right? And then we had after COVID, we had the highest unemployment in history, right? So we have to take all of these things into consideration, and it turned into a narrative, a story. In hindsight, it all makes sense, and it's very hard to see it going forward. But the easiest way is really to study history, because history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And that's what I see right now. I feel like we're in possibly early 2000s or late 90s with the technology boom, right? Everyone's on the craze for AI. But at the same time, we have to remember in the 90s, we were fighting over oil, out in the Middle East. And I feel like now we're fighting for data, right? We're pretty much going to war with China over Taiwan, over semiconductors. I don't know if you guys have heard, but semiconductors are a really big deal, pretty much microchips. These microchips power all of AI, right? All of these computers power AI, which powers productivity, right? Which they want because that's work. What they want to produce is work, right? And work could be measured in terms of energy, right? Sometimes measured as power, but they're trying to increase their work. So they want semiconductors, they want these microchips. And that's why we're looking at fighting with China, and then we're possibly fighting with Russia over energy. People don't realize about how much energy is out there in Ukraine. Right? And then we have our conversation of us backing Israel and Iran, and that's also that's something else. I see that as political positioning. That's why we got into that possibly because America didn't have a position in the Middle East prior to World War II. So yeah, all these chess pieces basically get placed on the board, and it's interesting to try to extract what we can from them. Really be open to these things, right? I never like to get into political affiliations about this, that. It's look, we need to look at the data, we need to look at the numbers, we need to look at what's actually true here. There's a lot of division and I mean, there shouldn't be division unless we're doing math. When it comes to investing here, I don't care about red or blue or any. I care about what is going to be best for the economy, the people, the market, us as a culture, as a nation. Those are really, really big things to me. And that's pretty much all we talk about here, right? Is how all of this interconnects, right? And I love having conversations like this with people because there are people that are experts in their certain fields, but it's only when we come together and we start talking that we can really share information, right? Because I may not have some data that this guy that is super into AI and that type of intelligence, right? Versus I may have a little bit more data information when it comes to power and electricity and nuclear that he may need or she may need or they may need for their whatever they're doing for investments, for their research and stuff like that. So basically, that's what we try to cover every single week here at the Military Wealth Club. And like I said before, this is tailored for military members, past, present, future. It doesn't matter here, but we just want to share information as much as possible. And whenever you're ready, for free real estate guides, resources, tools, head over to my site, themilitaryrealtor.us. And if you don't want to miss out on any daily content, make sure to like and subscribe and follow on Instagram, right? It's Mercedes, the Military Realtor. God bless, and see you next week. See y'all. Take care.